And as he told you, I've been a photographer for years. Actually, I hadn't been a photographer for years. I kind of dropped out of it and lost my vision. And 20 years later, after my wife finished her bachelor's degree, I re-entered into photography, and hopefully someday I'll quit my job as a blind man and move on to be a photographer. And that's an inside joke. I sell blinds for a living. All right, so this is the way I see it. Webster defines perspective as a capacity to view things in their true relations or relative importance. And but really there's three perspectives. Number one, first and the most important perspective is mine, okay? And number two, your perspective, that comes in second. And actually, really, number three is the most important. It's reality. That's what the most important perspective is. So I have a few stories from my life regarding misunderstood perspectives. And my third child, in his terrible twos, decided to climb up into the sink and wash himself. And that was directly after his mother's hot shower. And so Zachary's feet were instantly scalded. And I was close to home and young and a poor perspective, and my wife texted me. There used to be these things called pagers. And so I rushed home and noticed the damage, and I was really kind of stupid about the way I decided to do that. And I jumped in the car and I drove off to the hospital, and flashing my lights and blowing my horn, and somehow a Toyota horn just doesn't convey emergency. So from the driver's perspective in front of me, he probably thought I was a nut and was wondering what I was doing. What the heck's wrong with this guy? Why? I better slow him down. No wonder his wife's crying. He's driving like an idiot. And eventually we made it to the hospital, and Zachary's fine. Everything's good. A couple other changes in perspective happened during that time period, and what came from that. Zachary stopped calling me Daddy directly after that. And that's because, and I'm kind of shaking here, sorry. I held my son while the nurses worked on him. And it was a pretty painful experience, and it's pretty painful now that I realize that that's why he thought, gosh, Dad's torturing me, and all I was doing was trying to help in his healing. But my perspective changed there. My other perspective changed on that medical emergency, call an ambulance. I mean, my gosh, in Tulsa, they're free. They're on your water bill. You pay every month for it. So and don't worry about how much it's going to cost. Your wife calls you, says he's burned bad. Send the boy to the hospital in an ambulance, and you get to there later. So now I'm trying to speak on two planes here, and I hope you catch my kind of hidden metaphors that I have here. But in photography, I kind of try to look at things the same way. And I'm going to use a Toastmasters technique here and take a drink of water. Because really what I did was forgot where I was at. So, hope I know how to use this thing correctly. You know, in Toastmasters, they tell you not to look at your slides. The way I see it, everybody shoots down on the flower, and I'm trying to look at it from a different perspective. I try to force myself to look at everything differently. And it's really hard sometimes because we move on and do the natural thing, and we just do the walkthrough of, this is the way everybody else does it. Well, I try to force myself to look at it differently and photograph something differently, because I need to inspire people with my photographs. I need them to say something. I don't just need them to be a snapshot. And yes, there's thousands of photographers out there, and yes, they were when we had film Instamatics many years ago. I mean, there's always been thousands of photographers. There's always been thousands of writers. We're all up against the same force, but we all can be in the top 10%, honestly. So, when you photograph fireworks, think about shooting them in a different way. And not going to show the fireworks yet. That happened last night. Anyway, as my wife leaves the room shamed. When you photograph fireworks, everybody shoots at them up in the sky. And my face is probably bright red now. How about trying to shoot them in a reflection of something? And so that's the reflection of a firework in a pond that has a small ripple across it. And that's just something that happens cool, but we walk past beauty every day and we don't see it. And that goes on to my next story here. And on Sunday mornings, I try to go on a photography jaunt, and I try to walk around and do things and take photographs of things. Now, and what I was planning on doing is going down and take a picture of this old bridge in Bixby. I thought it was a wrecked bridge. It was a bent piece of iron. And so what I discovered that this twisted piece of steel was actually a piece of steel from the 9/11 towers. And so how do I convey that? How do I convey this twisted piece of steel with a respectful tribute? And so I crawled down underneath that thing, and I'm sure people thought that I was crazy, but in my mind, I was headed to photograph a twisted piece of steel from the power of the Arkansas River. And what I discovered was a twisted piece of steel from the power of men with the wrong perspective. And there's the results of that. It's been said that perception is your reality, but is that really true? And my challenge to you is to, before you strategically place yourself in front of a driver, before you bend over to photograph a rose or pull over to take a picture of a broken bridge, stop and think about it and try to see it in a different perspective. And here's an example in an upcoming video. Like I said, every week I try to catch something awesome. And in photo one, which I took a while back, I thought you had to do destination photography. You had to go somewhere. In photo two, I learned that there's beauty right in your own backyard. You don't have to go anywhere. This is video, something I found in our church alley behind, on a Sunday morning, in our church alley behind it. I found these child's flashcards. They're really simple words. And I became inspired, and I shot those cards where they laid, and I went home and wrote a poem. And then I did my very first movie, and I think it was truly inspired by God. And so the results of that encounter, I want you to remember, before you start packing your bags, awesome can be in your own backyard.